Welcome to the Dark Knight 1 to 100 Leveling Skills Guide. I'll be going over all of your skills as you train to be not even good enough to be my fake, better than the rest of them, but also hoping to kill your enemies along the way. Watch as you go from this to this. This is a beginner-focused series aimed to help those new to Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO genre, or still just need a little help. In that same vein, this will be focused on your actions and how to use them. We'll not be going deep into optimization, instead focused on the general play and giving general opening rotations. We will go through these together in order to help new players understand the process. If you wish to push your play further, there are further places you could research the job. The goal here is to drop players in on the ground level so they can make strides to improve themselves. Tooltips are broken up by expansion and that expansion's level cap. So level 50 for A Realm Reborn, 60 for Heavensward, 70 for Stormblood, 80 for Shadowbringers, 90 for Endwalker, and a final level cap of 100 in Dawntrail. I recommend all players add Sprint and Limit Break to their hotbars, both found in the General tab of the Actions menu. And as for how my hotbars build, it'll make sense at 100. Just put your skills on your hotbars so that you are comfortable as you play. Everyone has their own way of doing things. If you want more info on the how and why I set up my UI, check the description for a video about it. Finally, keep in mind that this is an active MMO. Patches can and will change jobs. Check the description for a quick overview of each patch's changes or special notes. With all that out of the way, please support me in whatever way you can, check my links below, and let's begin. Dark Knight is likely the most complex and hardest tank to play. The only tank that uses the MP bar, both offensively and defensively. A gauge to build up and spend as best you can, a lot of attacking buttons that arguably pushes it past Gunbreaker as being the most DPS-like of the tanks, though Dawntrail has condensed a little bit. You also tend to differ from other tanks with what specific cooldowns you have and their effects. This includes what is argued to be the best targeted ability in the game, along with having a second targeted mitigation. This is balanced out by having the most difficult invuln to use. To obtain Dark Knight, you need to reach the Heavensward expansion, which is immediately accessible upon completion of A Realm Reborn. The final quest of it is called Before the Dawn. Head into Ishgard's The Pillars, go to the Tribunal in the northeast, and you will have yourself a Dark Knight. Let's get into the finer details of each skill. We start at level 30 with a bit to go over. First is our role actions. We start with Rampart, Low Blow, Provoke, Interject, and Reprisal. This is a lot of stuff that you will be using quite often. I won't be going over these here, instead directing you to the corner or the description for a dedicated video on tank role actions. I especially recommend learning how these are used. Level 1, Tank Mastery. You're likely started with one of the other tanks, so you're hopefully used to this by now. It's really worded to say that you get bonus health and strength while also a passive 20% damage reduction. The bonus health is obvious, but your damage is still below that of a DPS. Level 1, 2, and 26, Hard Slash, Syphon Strike, and Souleater. This is our basic combo. You always want to hit this combo in order. This will have you do a 150, 240, and then 320 potency hit to a single target. It's a basic combo, but the second and third hits have extra effects. Syphon Strike also restores some MP, 600 of it. Dark Knight will be spending MP, so this MP generation is very important. Souleater, meanwhile, finishes the combo with a 300 potency heal. This will help the healer keep you up in bosses or other single target situations. It isn't much, but it does exist. We'll have further reasons to finish the combo later, so remember to do your combos for good damage and healing. Level 6, Unleash. This is our AoE, or Area of Effect attack. It has a 5 yalm range, doing 120 potency to all enemies within that range. You have to be in the middle of packs of enemies to hit them all, and you want to be spamming this if there are 3 or more enemies. On 2 enemies, just alternate your main combo between both enemies to maintain aggro. The more enemies you pull, the more you want to be using Unleash. The damage adds up quickly, as does your need to maintain the enmity lead on them all. On any group of enemies, you usually want to start every encounter with an Unleash to get a base level of enmity on all of them. Simply put though, AoE attack, hit as many enemies as you can for enmity and damage. Also, this is marked as a spell. This doesn't mean much overall, just that skill speed will have no effect on it. Level 10, Grit. This is a Dark Knight's enmity stance. You have this gem UI element that shows if the buff is running. If you see spikes, you're generating extra enmity. In most cases, you always want this on, with the exceptions of 8-player or more content, which usually has multiple tanks. But otherwise, this multiplies all enmity generated by a ridiculous amount. The party list has an enmity gauge. The enmity of your current selected target will be displayed under the job icons, along with a number or a letter. You want to have an A, signaling you have the lead over anyone else. The enemy list also has an enmity indicator. Anything but a red square is bad for you. Red square means that you are the enemy's current target, so you want every enemy to have that. The mentioned exceptions are in larger scale content. There are 2 or more tanks depending on what you are doing, and you don't want to all be fighting for the enmity lead. This could just end up getting allies killed. Only one of you takes control of the boss, the other tank's in charge of adds, additional enemies, or the boss when the other tank is unable to tank. Rarely, there can be 2 bosses, or mechanics that require the off-tank to have at least second in enmity. With random parties, whoever puts their enmity stance up first is usually in charge. Every tank has a version of Grit. Same effects, but name, icon, and animation are different. You'll get used to them as you progress, but it's at least a rule you can follow. You can also go based on who has the most gear. Or better yet, just talk. Type and communicate. Controller users on PlayStation or Xbox, a cheap $5 USB keyboard will work. It's worth it. If they refuse to communicate and start to force their way into tanking, I guess just let them unless they are really bad. Beyond who is currently tanking, be ready to take control if the other tank dies. Shortly into a fight, turn Grit on to generate enmity, even as the off tank. This will put you in second place above your allies. If the main tank dies, the boss will turn to hit you instead of your allies. Move into normal tanking position too. Bosses should always be facing away from the party, generally the north of the arena. When you level sync into lower level duties, all buffs are turned off. Grit will need to be turned on at the start of every duty lower than your level. Always make sure the gem is glowing before you start to pull enemies. Level 15, Unmend. This is our ranged attack, mostly for engagement and positioning. You can hit any enemy within 20 yalms, dealing 150 potency of damage. It has a further enmity multiplier on top, so any enemy hit by this will be much less likely to be ripped away from you. Also good for getting an enemy back to you after being ripped away. When running up to enemies, hit Unmend to start dragging the enemies to you. It starts to bring all enemies toward you to get enmity sooner with Unleash. For bosses, you can get them into the middle of the arena from the edge. Bosses usually want to be placed mid, with exceptions. Other than as an engagement tool, you don't use Unmend much. There's rare cases where you'll be out of range of a boss and can't attack other than Unmend. Usually only when the boss explicitly is forcing you to run far away, like with a very big AoE around it. Even when we do need to run out, we run right back in after, meaning you ideally only will Unmend once. Level 30, Flood of Darkness. I really hope I don't need to mention this by this point, but do your job quests. This is the first of many job quest locked skills. I won't be mentioning this further beyond the card in the top left saying it is quest locked. Flood has a 1-second cooldown just so you can't super spam it, is an OGCD ability so you can weave it, and has a massive 3000 MP cost. It is an AoE with a 10 yalm range, shooting a line in the direction of your current target. It deals 100 potency to all enemies hit. You will use this in single target for the time being, which is where that 600 MP from Syphon Strike comes in. It may only be 100 potency, but it's still more damage. On top of that is the other UI element we have. The Darkside gauge will light up upon using Flood of Darkness. Darkside is a 10% damage increase while it lasts. Using Flood of Darkness will give 30 seconds of Darkside. Multiple uses increasing the timer further up to the maximum of 60 seconds. For the most part, you're going to just use Flood of Darkness anytime you can. Spending your MP as you get it will keep Darkside running all but permanently. Though something you should try practicing now is always have 3000 MP available outside of openers. Our level 70 skill is extremely useful and important, but it's also going to cost us MP. Practicing MP economy now is going to be helpful later. Otherwise, if you have MP, spend it for damage and Darkside. It's a pretty basic start, but it is more than the 2 tank classes start with. Ultimately, it just boils down to a basic combo, an AoE, a ranged move to pull, and the usual tank stuff. Let's get a bit more skills before we go into building any sort of opener. Level 32 is a quick return to roll actions. Arm's Length comes in, and is in fact a defensive cooldown. Please use this as a tank. Level 35, Blood Weapon. Blood Weapon has a 60-second cooldown, granting you 3 stacks of itself for 15 seconds. Using spells or weapon skills will grant you 600 MP for each stack, or a total 1800 MP. If you use Unleash and hit multiple enemies, you will still only gain 600 MP. Simply put, use this on cooldown and make sure you aren't at maximum MP. Be sure you're spending MP with Flood of Darkness, especially with Blood Weapon up. Syphon Strike is 1200 MP regained when used under Blood Weapon. Normal generation is pretty fast, all things considered. So make sure you don't overcap and get lots of Flood uses out. Level 38, Shadow Wall. This is a big mitigation. On a 2-minute cooldown, this reduces all incoming damage by 30% for 15 seconds. This is ideal for big tank busters or for reducing the damage in large trash pools. When you go and pull 10 enemies at once, 30% less damage is a huge boost. 2 minutes is also a lengthy cooldown, but not as lengthy as it could be. Be willing to throw out Shadow Wall anytime there's going to be big damage. Bosses and trash both deserve the cooldowns, but especially big pulls and trash. Trash is more dangerous than bosses is a motto you can follow. Level 40, Stalwart Soul. This is our first AoE combo. After using Unleash, you can use Stalwart Soul for a 150 potency hit to all enemies within 5 yalms, just like Unleash. On top of that is a 600 MP regen for every combo of Stalwart Soul. Before now, during AoE, all of your MP regeneration was the small passive regen and Blood Weapon anytime it came up. Now we have 600 MP every other attack we do. It's a bigger hit in AoE and allows us to use Flood of Darkness more than before to take enemies down. Level 40, Edge of Darkness. This is going to replace Flood of Darkness in single target. It has the same recast, MP cost, and even shares the recast timer with Flood of Darkness. Darkside is also still applied. It instead deals 300 potency of damage to a single enemy, being as strong as Flood on 3 enemies. By now you should have the practice on spending MP in single target. Just swap Flood to being Edge when there are only 1 or 2 enemies. Level 45, Dark Mind. On a 60-second cooldown, Dark Mind reduces all magic damage by 20% and all physical damage by 10% for 10 seconds. This is very specific. Far better used for magical situations, but still useful for physical attacks. To know when an attack is magical or physical, you have to be hit by it and remember, though there are tells you can typically follow. Some enemy types make it very obvious they are magical with every attack they do being a cast, with a cast bar. As you get used to the game, you'll remember which enemies do which sorts of things. Like any mitigations, be sure to use it in both trash and bosses. In the absolute worst case scenario, this is a 10% mitigation for 10 seconds. That's really good for the worst case, and the short cooldown means you get to use it often. Our final role action is Shirk at level 48. Level 50, Living Dead. This skill has a lot of layers. First, this has a 5-minute cooldown because this is Dark Knight's Invuln skill, Invuln being invulnerability. This grants Living Dead for 10 seconds. When under Living Dead, you cannot die with few exceptions, usually relegated to high-end mechanics that will kill you anyway. When hitting 0 HP, Living Dead will expire and leave you at 1 HP instead. In its place, you will gain Walking Dead for 10 seconds. Within this 10-second timer, you still cannot drop past 1 HP. You have until Walking Dead runs out to be healed your max HP worth of HP, or you will automatically die no matter how much HP you have. You do not need to be healed to max, only healed the amount equaling your max. So even if you are only halfway to max HP, while still taking damage, Walking Dead won't kill you. Walking Dead has one other effect, but the tooltip makes it seem like Living Dead gives this buff. While under Walking Dead, all weapon skills and spells will have an attached 1500 potency heal. This applies to all enemies hit when it is an AoE attack. So if you hit Unleash on, say, 6 enemies, that is an automatic 9000 potency heal. Once you have been healed for your max HP worth of healing, Walking Dead will become Undead Rebirth, copying the timer of Walking Dead. This ensures you get the full 10 seconds of invulnerability. However, you lose the healing effect of Walking Dead. In high-end raiding, you will be using this very intentionally to skip some mechanics or tank busters. The self-heal will heal most of what you need, so even just one heal thrown you away from a healer will ensure you don't die to Walking Dead. If you do still die to Walking Dead, you at least survived an extra 10 seconds. Casual content, it tends to be difficult to make use of Living Dead in bosses, since they don't hurt much. In trash mobs, you're guaranteed survival on basically any multi-pool. One single unleash is going to fully heal you. At high levels when healing is overall less effective, the Stalwart Soul combo you do will definitely be enough. This, however, ends up being some anti-synergy in a way. If you want to maximize the worth of Living Dead in casual content, you need to intentionally stop attacking once you hit 1 HP. The self-heal is so powerful that one attack will immediately disable it. If you waited 5 seconds first, that's 5 seconds of the enemies just attacking you at 1 HP and functionally doing 0 damage. If you aren't using it with such laser-focused intent, it ends up being quite a bit less effective. It is at least worth 1 full HP bar's worth of damage ignored. If you go into a pool with no mitigations except Living Dead, hit 1 HP, then immediately unleash, you'll heal right back up to max. So again, you at least had 1 full HP bar of ignoring damage. It's just not as much as a full HP bar plus the 10-second timer. Be sure to also tell your healer your plan before doing it. A white mage is even further anti-synergy if they say, use Benediction, not realizing your plan. There's also Holy, which will stun enemies. You should tell a healer about any invuln usage, but Living Dead especially needs communication. Invulns aside, we have openers to talk about. There's still very little to do overall. It's at least something to get us started, practicing for later levels. Pre-pull, Grit. Unmend, Edge of Darkness. Hard Slash, Syphon Strike. Souleater, Blood Weapon, Hard Slash, Edge of Darkness, Syphon Strike, Edge of Darkness, Souleater, Edge of Darkness. Before the opener itself, Grit is only for if you are the tank. You want Grit on to maintain the enmity lead. Unmend will also help with that, having its own enmity multiplier. This will help you pull the boss to the center of the arena. Centering bosses is almost always the right call, with very few exceptions. Dark Knight has a lot of weaving, and double weaving especially at level cap. We start off with an Edge of Darkness as soon as you move into range. Ideally, you will not clip your GCD before you hard slash. This will uncap your MP, letting us regen some as we fight. We'll go down our full combo from here. We don't do anything more until after Souleater, specifically because of party buffs. Later on, many jobs will have buffs that make everyone hit harder. You might be a tank, but your damage is nothing to sneeze at. Party buffs will all be up about after Souleater, so we'll use our buff of Blood Weapon. This will make our MP start going back up really fast, but we'll wait one more GCD before using our MP for if there are any late sent buffs. From here, you just go through your GCD combo and use an Edge of Darkness after every GCD. Keep going until you are out of MP. Even in higher levels when we have MP management, we're going to dump all of our MP in openers. The damage bonus of all buffs up is too much to pass up. Every minute, use Blood Weapon on cooldown to gain extra uses of Edge of Darkness. Every 2-minute window, you're going to aim to have near max MP to put as many Edge of Darkness uses into party buffs, at least once those buffs are a thing in later levels. You'll also notice the lack of mitigations being used in this opener. This is intentional for a lot of reasons. Most important is every fight differs. Most of them include some form of raid-wide damage and tank buster early on, but this is not a hard and fast rule. Plus, each boss is of varying degrees of power, requiring different levels of mitigation. What mitigation is good to use and when to use it will change based on every fight, especially in the high end. As for AoE and so-called AoE openers, it's not so simple. AoE is far more complex a situation. There's the idea of wall-to-wall pulls. If you're at all confident in your abilities, you'll be grabbing multiple groups of enemies instead of just one every time it's possible. You're not going to do any sort of burst until all the groups are together, which means a long process of running and grabbing all the enemies. So prepare yourself on the run-up, group the enemies tightly together, and then unleash it all, which for AoE means basically the same thing, just with the AoE combo instead. Use a Flood of Darkness, pop Blood Weapon, and bottom out on MP. Remember to slot in mitigation somewhere too, since wall-to-wall pulls can really hurt. That's the start of Dark Knight's toolkit. We start off pretty simple, with one weirdest skill being Dark Mind, plus the weirdest invuln being Living Dead. We're going to be focusing on the damage end for our coming skills in the Heaven's Ward levels. Level 52, Salted Earth. On a 90-second cooldown, this places a 5-yalm AoE bubble around yourself. This is a dot or damage over time. Dots work on server ticks, doing damage every 3 seconds. In total, that's 5 ticks of damage. Any enemies inside the bubble will take 50 potency of damage every tick. However, the act of placing Salted Earth is also a tick of damage for 6 ticks of damage total. That's 300 potency of damage to all enemies in the bubble, so long as they are within the bubble for the full duration. Keep in mind that this is placed on yourself. If you haven't corralled all the enemies into a tight circle already, do so and place Salted in the middle of them. Try and move as many enemies into your AoE as best you can. On top of that, don't ignore this for bosses. Unless it is a very mobile boss that moves itself around a lot, it's just a free 300 potency of damage. Use Salted Earth on cooldown. Level 54, Shadowstride. This is our first skill with charges. It can charge up to 2 total uses, each with a 30-second charge time. The moment you use one charge, the cooldown starts rolling. As for the skill itself, this is a gap closer that also gives you a boost of enmity. The main use of this is for when you're forced to run away from a boss. All you can use when far away is Unmend. Getting toward your enemy is where your main damage is going to come from. So, when you are far away, dash to the boss when the coast's clear. Just make sure you don't pull bosses with this. It's not a good opening move, both in terms of damage and positioning. You can't center a boss as well when you dash right to it. Also make sure not to be too gung-ho with gap closes in wall-to-wall pulling. Depending on your healer, they may easily fall behind. Everyone has sprint, but you might be the only person in a dungeon with a gap closer. This also makes it harder for the DPS to reach the enemies. They just get to hold W and try to catch up, while you speed away. Level 56, Abyssal Drain. On a 60-second cooldown, this does 240 potency of damage to a target and all enemies within 5 yalms of the target. On hit, you will recover 600 MP and 500 potency worth of healing. Unlike the MP heal though, the heal is 500 potency for every single enemy hit. This fact is extremely important because functionally, this works as mitigation. If you are sitting at half HP and use Abyssal Drain on 5 enemies, you will get 2,500 potency of healing and see your HP bar jump up quite a bit. It will be extremely tempting to throw this out instantly in any battle for damage. 240 potency per enemy is a big hit, but waiting a few seconds for the heal can help up your survival in a fight even just a little bit. If nothing else, your healer can save one of their healing tools. Otherwise, make sure you're using this in every AoE situation. For a few levels, this is for single target too, but quickly this will be for AoE only. Level 60, Carve and Spit. This shares the cooldown with Abyssal Drain. If you use one, they both go on the same 60-second cooldown. Consequently, this is a single target choice. It gives 600 MP, heals 500 potency, and deals 510 potency of damage to a single enemy. 500 potency of healing is an extra little boost every time it comes off cooldown. Make sure you use it on cooldown, if not for the heal, then for the big damage. This set of skills massively bumped our offensive capabilities, but also a bit defensively thanks to the healing on those last 2 skills. This also means we can slot in these skills into our opener. Though that mostly just means weaving in each skill with an Edge of Darkness, or Flood of Darkness where applicable. Throw out Blood Weapon first as always, then use the fact we can double weave to get these in. I have them slotted in these specific positions only because of the level 100 opener. You could do Carve and Spit after the second Syphon strike, but later on we're doing it after the third. So it's purely a muscle memory placement. Remember, we're doing the bulk of things after Souleater because of raid buff timings. Technically, you could be using stuff sooner for making your own single weave opener, but we're gonna keep rolling with this pattern. As for the AoE opener, it's the same idea but with Abyssal Drain. Remember that Shadowstride can be used for getting enmity on enemies. Just try not to use it for too much gap closing, lest you leave your party behind during the run. With that quick but easy fill-in of skills, let's get into Stormblood. Things are going to change a lot with this one. Level 62, Blackblood and Bloodspiller. Blackblood adds an extension to our enmity gem here. It turns into a full sword gauge that fills upon completing combos. Both Souleater and Stalwart Soul will give 20 blood gauge. 5 full combos will cap the gauge out at 100. This gauge will be spent on Bloodspiller. It's a GCD and costs 50 gauge to use. This will not break a combo if you use it mid-combo, and does an impressive 500 potency of damage to a target. You're going to want to use as many Bloodspillers as you can. As you get gauge, use it to do a big hit to the boss. You're not really going to touch this for AoE though. That's what our next skill is for. Level 64, Quietus. This is our AoE Bloodspiller. The same rules all apply, except that this is a 5-yalm AoE around yourself that does 200 potency of damage to all enemies hit. That's stronger than Bloodspiller on 3 or more enemies. Quietus should get thrown out anytime you have the gauge available. It's a big boost to your AoE output. Remember that the AoE combo is shorter, so it will be gaining gauge really quickly in trash pools. Level 66, Enhanced Blackblood. This now makes Blood Weapon give you blood gauge. Every stack of Blood Weapon will give you 10 blood gauge. That's an extra 30 gauge every Blood Weapon. And since 3 hits is a full single target combo, you'll be getting a full 50 gauge for a Bloodspiller or a Quietus during Blood Weapon. However, it's not going to be Blood Weapon anymore in 2 levels. Level 66, Dark Missionary. On a 90-second cooldown and with a 30-yalm range, this reduces all magic damage to allies within range by 10% and physical damage by 5%. The buff lasts for 15 seconds. You're rarely going to be using this for yourself. It's Dark Mind, but for the entire party. Use this to protect them from raid-wide AoEs. There are a few exceptions to the rule of raid-wides being magical-based. They exist, but for the most part, if an attack is going to damage everyone, no matter what they do, Dark Missionary is going to protect them for 10%. Even if it is physical, reduced damage is reduced damage. This is especially important in higher levels of content, where raid-wides just hurt a lot. Even without people making mistakes, it's a lot of damage, and even a little bit of protection goes a long way. The only issue is the cooldown length. It's not overly long, but you need to use it on the biggest points of damage if you can. Sometimes it will be mechanics instead of raid-wides, where the mechanic does multiple instances of high damage. Regardless, try to aim to protect the party when a lot of damage is going out. Level 68, Blood Weapon Mastery and Delirium. Blood Weapon is being upgraded into Delirium. Delirium has all the same bonuses as Blood Weapon, but with a few more added. You will gain both 3 stacks of Blood Weapon and 3 stacks of Delirium. Delirium stacks are used for casting Bloodspiller or Quietus for free. In a way, this counts as 150 gauge for free, but without spending any you have. You will also gain MP on each use of Delirium, in addition to the Blood Weapon MP. Bloodspiller will give 200 MP, and Quietus will give 500 MP per Delirium stack, so up to an additional half a use of Edge or Flood of Darkness. Because of both of these added benefits, be ready to go into Delirium with a little less than maximum gauge and resources. If you go into Delirium with more than 70 gauge, you'll overcap and lose some of the benefits of Blood Weapon. Try to Bloodspiller ahead of time if you are over 70. Below 80, you're fine to hold. We're still going to be using this on cooldown. It's so much more powerful, skipping even one use is a huge waste. Be ready to spam Bloodspiller or Quietus when Delirium comes up. Level 70, the Blackest Night. On a short 15-second cooldown and costing 3000 MP, this places a shield on yourself or a target with 25% of the target's max HP. It lasts for 7 seconds, so there is very little leeway in getting the full strength of the shield. You definitely want to make use of the full power, with the enemy breaking it. When broken, you are granted Dark Arts. That's what this Dark Knight icon on the Darkside gauge is for. It will light up yellow and will allow you one use of Edge or Flood of Darkness for free. It's like you get a free shield for the same 3000 MP cost for that Edge or Flood. I emphasize again though, it is when the shield is broken that you are given Dark Arts. If the timer runs out, no Dark Arts, regardless of how much is left in the shield. The uses of this are extremely varied. On yourself for tank busters or high consistent damage in bosses. giving the shield to your co-tank for their tanking tank busters or high consistent damage. That one DPS who has low HP due to poor healing or taking avoidable damage could use a shield to survive the next trade-wide attack. Trash pools are also high consistent damage. Shielding yourself at 25% of your HP every 15 seconds is going to add up very quickly, with trash usually lasting for much longer than that. Given that's talking about multiple uses in a single fight, we come back to my warning. You need 3000 MP saved to be able to use the Blackest Night, from this point now just called TBN. Any situation that spends the entire shield ends up being a huge boon. Less damage from enemies and no lost DPS. Something like that you want to be consistently using, which means MP management. Always have 3000 MP banked for using TBN. If you don't, you're missing out on a huge part of your toolkit. TBN can be very hard to use to its maximum effect. The big damage that comes with wall-to-wall pulling? No brainer, use TBN. Tank busters? Use TBN. But what about smaller pools? Will the enemies spend the whole shield, or are they so weak that TBN is a waste? Will the raid-wides plus autos a boss do within 7 seconds spend the shield? There's no tank busters coming up, but a lot of bosses hit so weakly that auto attacks won't break the shield. If the shield doesn't break, it wasn't worth using. If you aren't already sitting at death's door, it's little enough damage that the healer probably wouldn't even notice if you did or did not use TBN. It's this here that pushes TBN from just a god tier skill to an amazing skill that requires practice. You have to get used to judging how much damage you are taking. Our next set of openers are mainly focused on adding in Blackblood and the associated skills. We'll also be adding in a giant asterisk to every opener going forward. In the pre-pool, we're going to add in TBN before we unmend. The problem is obvious, I hope, with how much I spent talking about how an unbroken shield making it a waste. If the content you are doing is lower difficulty, you're always going to skip this. If you are doing high-end content, this shield has a high chance of breaking from boss auto attacks. Whether or not you are able to use this TBN is actually going to affect your opener. With how MP regen works, you should be able to get 5 Edge of Darkness uses within a typical opener window. One of them will be from the Dark Art stack you get, and another from MP regen you get as soon as you TBN. If you do not TBN, then your final Edge of Darkness will be delayed. You can still get 5 casts, but it will be delayed. Otherwise, the only change we have is instead of a second combo, we're going to use Bloodspiller 4 times before going back to normal GCD combos. We get 50 gauge in this opener, 20 from Souleater, and 30 from Delirium. Delirium itself is 3 Bloodspillers. The same can be said for AoE openers, though when it comes to TBN, you're guaranteed for it to break in any sort of wall-to-wall pulling. As a result, the goal is going to be about the same. Head into Delirium and instead spam Quietus. The 4 or even 5 uses we get will be almost an entire Flood of Darkness on its own. Remember, the run-up will give us an unknown amount of blood gauge depending on how things go. You will use AoE combos to grab enemies, getting gauge passively. There could be a lot of gauge gained in the run-up to the opener. Just expect at least 4 Quietus uses, but very likely to be 5 of them. TBN is a major change in the job, but remains only a small part of the overall toolkit. Heading into Shadowbringer's levels, we're not going to see very many changes. Level 74, Darkside Mastery, Flood of Shadow, and Edge of Shadow. Darkside Mastery is just upgrading Flood of Darkness and Edge of Darkness into Flood of Shadow and Edge of Shadow, because we all know shadows are scarier. Looks like we'll all be making call-out posts on our twitter.com. Otherwise, these are just potency boosts. Flood of Shadow is 160 potency, and Edge of Shadow is 460 potency. Flood is still stronger on 3 or more enemies. Level 80, Living Shadow. On a 2-minute cooldown, this will summon Esteem to your side. They are functionally a fancy dot, but also sometimes AoE. They will lock onto whatever enemy you are targeting until it dies. Even if you swap targets, Esteem will not. They do attacks of 340 potency with a set order of attacks after a lengthy summon animation. Abyssal Drain, Shadowstride, Flood of Shadow, Edge of Shadow, Bloodspiller, Carve and Spit. The attacks that you would expect to be AoE are indeed AoE. Unfortunately, that's only 2 of the 6 moves he does. that's more than plenty of an excuse for you to want to use this in both bosses and trash fights. It is completely free after all, and will at worst take down one enemy faster than the rest. Big damage in the form of a fancy dot you use on cooldown. Keep in mind the slow boot up time too. If you summon him at the end of a battle, he could only actually start attacking once the enemy dies. Also, remember, Esteem withdraws from the battle. Esteem withdraws from the battle. Esteem withdraws from the battle. Yeah, that's all you get out of Shadowbringers. 2 skills, 3 if you count there being 2 potency boosts. So let's add Living Shadow into our openers. Keep in mind that he counts as a sort of pet, so the summon animation will be taken into account. We're going to summon him immediately after the hard slash. The slow summon animation will go, and then party buffs will go out as he actually starts to activate. Do the same in AoE. Summon him as you approach the final pack of enemies at earliest. Otherwise it'll be part of our first GCD weave. It's fire and forget. And walkout levels are going to be a lot more involved with us actually getting more than one new skill. Level 82, Oblation. This has 2 charges with a charge time of 60 seconds. This can be placed on yourself or an ally. It reduces damage by 10% for 10 seconds. Just like TBN, this can save the life of an ally or be used on the main tank for tank busters. It's just not as strong in most casual content situations. It has no MP cost to entry and not too long of a cooldown. When using it on yourself, it's very good for pairing with other cooldowns. Oblation with Rampart, for example. If nothing else, it can be used for smaller instances of damage. The fact this has charges is in itself a useful feature. Keep it on cooldown to roll the charge time, while keeping a charge in your pocket for tank busters. Level 84, Enhanced Unmend. This reduces the Shadowstride cooldown by 5 seconds for every use of Unmend, with a rare exception which I assume is when enemies are immune to damage. Why is this skill here? I don't know. If you're using Unmend that much, you're doing a trash pull where you aren't needing Shadowstride, doing some very intense raiding, which even Ultimate usually doesn't call for that much Unmend, or playing pretty inefficiently. Level 84, Melee Mastery. This is just a bunch of potency boosts, but also a bit of misleading in the tooltip. Syphon Strike and Souleater are boosted to 120 and 140 potency, is what it says. What it doesn't say is that this also boosts the combo potencies. Otherwise, this doesn't change your gameplay. Level 86, Salt and Darkness. This is our first of 2 uses of action change settings for Dark Knight. This allows us to set whether or not actions will turn into other actions. Salted Earth can be allowed to turn into Salt and Darkness, and add a short delay so you do not accidentally use both skills back to back. You can use them as separate buttons in either case. Put your settings how you want, I will be using them as you see. This is an upgrade to Salted Earth. Upon placing Salted Earth, you can use Salt and Darkness. You will get 1 use of Salt and Darkness within Salted Earth due to its 20-second cooldown. You must use it before Salted Earth expires, because this will cause Salted Earth to pulse. All enemies inside the bubble will take damage. The first enemy will take 500 potency of damage, with all enemies beyond the first taking 375 potency. This is an extra little bit of attacking you can do after any use of Salted Earth. Don't forget to use it, since it's a very strong hit. Level 88, Enhanced Living Shadow. Living Shadow gets its own potency boosts. Its attacks are now worth 420 potency. That's a pretty huge boost all things considered, but it's just potency. Level 90, Enhanced Living Shadow 2, and Shadowbringer. Let's start with the Living Shadow bit. The Flood of Shadow is replaced with Shadowbringer. Instead of a 420 potency strike, it is 570 potency. Any enemies after the first target will take 427 potency of damage. Shadowbringer for you is a skill with 2 charges and a 60-second charge time. This is the same size as Flood of Shadow, and does 600 potency to the first enemy, 450 potency to all enemies after the first. Because of the charge time, you can hold on to your charges to use both every 2 minutes, and align for burst phases and party buffs. If doing a dungeon, feel free to use it on cooldown just to make sure you get that huge AoE potency. The only other note here is that it can only be used under Darkside. Remember how I never once mentioned Darkside after it was introduced? If you don't have Darkside up at all times, you're doing things pretty wrong. Anyway, use on cooldown or save for every 2-minute burst window, so long as you do use it. And use it we will in our next opener. Between 2 charges of Shadowbringer and Salt and Darkness, we have a lot of weaving to do now. Salted Earth remains the first of our major weaves because of Salt and Darkness. Yet Salt and Darkness comes in all the way at the end. This is because of just how strong all of our other skills are, and that we have to weave in Edge of Shadow after every GCD. We have to use it so many times, putting it in every weave slot we can is kind of a big one. Though remember what I said about TBN and the MP economy. This last Edge of Shadow could be not available yet, meaning you could instead weave your second Shadowbringer together with Salt and Darkness. Shadowbringer itself, we're going to put the first use of it as our second double weave. Carve and Spit might be weaker, but getting the cooldown rolling is better for us than using both charges back to back. It's good for any misalignments we have when we come around to burst windows. Otherwise, we're just trying to throw everything out with edge casts. Same goes for AoE. Shadowbringer is far stronger than Abyssal Drain, but having it in the middle here doubles as a huge heal. Carve and Spit has a heal too, but far less of one than an AoE Abyssal Drain. Good luck throwing out all these attacks without standing in any orange puddles showing up everywhere. Be extra sure to stay in your Salted Earth for the eventual Salt and Darkness use. That's a lot busier of an opener and burst phases, to the point that this is as busy as we get. While we will be seeing a few changes and additional skills in Dawntrail levels, we won't be getting any new weaves. Level 92, Shadow Wall Mastery and Shadowed Vigil. Shadow Wall is upgraded into Shadowed Vigil. It reduces damage by a further 10%, reducing damage by 40% now. The duration is the same, but also comes with a new 20-second long buff called Vigilant. When the timer runs out, or your HP falls below 50% of your max, you will instantly be healed for 1200 potency, so long as you survive the attack that brought you below 50% that is. If you go from 100% to death in one shot, you won't be healed. The uses of the skill are all the same though, it just comes with a bonus heal. It's a pretty good heal, but not game-changing. Level 94, Melee Mastery 2. These are all just a bunch of potency boosts to various attacks. Our base combo, Bloodspenders, and Carve and Spit all got some boosts. Nothing new. Level 96, Enhanced Delirium, Scarlet Delirium, Comeuppance, Torcleaver, and Impalement. Functionally, Enhanced Delirium is a very fancy form of potency boost. Delirium stacks have a new effect, changing Bloodspiller and Quietus into different skills. Quietus will turn into Impalement for 3 uses, doing 300 potency instead of the normal 240 of Quietus. Bloodspiller will become a self-contained combo. It goes Scarlet Delirium, Comeuppance, Torcleaver in that order. Rather than the normal 600 potency, these do 620, 720, and 820 potency. This is a significant boost when you use Delirium, but again, it's just a fancy animation for a potency boost. Level 100, Enhanced Living Shadow 3, and Disesteem. A little bit more than a potency boost, we have another action change setting skill. Though this does come with a potency boost, where the Carve and Spit of your Living Shadow is now Disesteem, doing 620 potency to the first enemy, and 465 potency to all others. Just by making it an AoE, this is a huge upgrade. For you, using Living Shadow will grant you one use of your own Disesteem attack via the buff Scorn. You have 30 seconds to use it. This is a massive 1000 potency straight line AoE toward your target. All enemies after the first will take 750 potency. You should be used to aiming straight lines to hit as many enemies as possible, but now you need to really focus your aim. This is way too strong of an attack to miss with. That's 250% the power of an Impalement, near 3 times of a Quietus. And that's the one and only attack that will be actually new for us. Dawntrail does significantly boost our power, but overall didn't do much to change how we play, which is going to carry into our opener. I'm going to explain the opener from the beginning as a bit of a refresher and to make sure we understand why we do things in this order. Grit here is only applicable as the main tank. If you are the off tank, keep Grit off. To start the actual active part, the pre-pull phase is a bit weird. TBN here is going to change whether the final Edge of Darkness happens sooner or later. In almost all casual content, TBN pre-pull will not be good. It will not break and not give you a free Dark Arts. This ends up being a huge loss when you consider it's one less skill inside of party buffs. So unless you're doing at least Extreme or higher, skip the TBN. We start with Unmend since the actual damage isn't counted until slightly into the animation, letting our GCD roll early. This also gives us time to Edge of Shadow for Darkside on the run-up before the next GCD, which we're going to obviously start with our main combo and go through the full thing. After the hard slash, we immediately send out Living Shadow. Due to the long summon animation, it gives the pet time to activate and immediately start attacking once party buffs are going out, which is after the Souleater. Since this is where party buffs are out, we will Delirium and start our Bake Burst. Every weave afterward will have an Edge of Shadow to empty out our MP, and spend Dark Arts if we were able to use TBN. Remember, this last Edge of Shadow may be delayed a bit because of the lack of TBN. As for everything else we do, we're going to start a Delirium with Disesteem. Being the strongest attack, we want that out first. From there we're going to be doing our upgraded Bloodspiller combo into a raw Bloodspiller at the end. The Souleater gave us 20 gauge, and Delirium is another 30, giving us just enough for a final Bloodspiller before we return to our base combo. As for the weaves, we will start with Salted Earth due to its odd cooldown timer, it being a dot meaning it needs time to work, and the Salt and Darkness cast at the end. Then we use Shadowbringer due to it being strong and having 2 charges, getting the cooldown rolling sooner than later. Then Carve and Spit before the second Shadowbringer, again for cooldown rolling reasons. Then is the second Shadowbringer, ending on the weaker but still strong Salt and Darkness. This might feel tight to have Salt and Darkness late, but we have plenty of time. From there, we just do our base combo over and over and use stuff as it comes off of cooldown. Wait for Shadowbringers to get both stacks back to use it in burst phases instead. The weird cooldown timer of Salted Earth is just something you have to deal with. Remember that the lack of mitigations besides TBN used in an opener does not mean you use none. What you use and when you use it is going to depend on the fight you're doing. If nothing else, a Rampart in here will be fine. Now let's talk about the karaoke opener. That's where I'll go through the opener, saying the skill names as they are used. This will give you an idea of the pace of the opener, especially when considering all the weaving. But because skill names are long and a lot is happening at once, skill names are going to trample over each other. Follow the pace rather than as a worded direction. Pre-pull, Grit, TBN, Unmend, Edge of Shadow, Hard Slash, Living Shadow, Syphon Strike, Souleater, Delirium, Disesteem, Salted Earth, Edge of Darkness, Scarlet, Delirium, Shadowbringer, Edge of Shadow, Comeuppance, Carve and Spit, Edge of Shadow, Torcleaver, Shadowbringer, Edge of Shadow, Bloodspiller, Salt and Darkness. Let's also go over the AoE opener for 100 and just show it's not much different still. Just remember you need to aim Flood of Shadow and Disesteem as line AoEs, while your other AoEs are all circles around you or a target. You have to dance in and out of the enemies to properly hit as many targets as possible. Be careful you don't move enemies out of your Salted Earth or other ally AoE puddles like Ninja's Doton. Do the dance while keeping enemies as still as possible. Otherwise, the AoE opener is very similar to single target, just directly replacing the single target options with AoE. That's Dark Knight for you, edgy but cool and fun to play. It's a very weave heavy opener, and currently the busiest tank to play I'd say, but it remains good, strong, and just fun. Enjoy the shadows. Thank you for watching this Dark Knight 1 to 100 leveling skills guide. Feel free to give feedback or ask questions on what might still be confusing to you. I'm always seeking to improve, as should you. Don't stop with this guide, even if I succeeded in helping you improve. Please leave a rating, comment, sub, those really do help creators. You can also come watch me on Twitch or even go follow my Patreon. The links in the description will take you where you need to. Have fun in your adventures across Terral, and may the power of Anne and Nidhogg lay waste to your enemies.